In the most sensational murder case of 2022, who is Bryan Kohberger, the alleged murderer of the Idaho college students? Well, we're going to tell you things about this alleged murder that you may not know. This and more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster, what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
In this podcast are those solely of individuals interviewed and participating in this show and do not represent those of Peacemaker Network and Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello again, and welcome to Charlie Crimebuster. We appreciate each and every one of you who download our episodes. Hey, I try not to look at the stats very often. I really don't want that to be what drives our episodes. But sometimes it's difficult not to look, especially when the audience continues to grow. I used to be excited when 100 people downloaded the podcasts, but now those hundreds have turned into thousands. And it humbles us. It makes me appreciate each and every listener. Hey, by the way, we'd love for you to reach out with a shout-out. You can reach me at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. And as we say every episode, we welcome your comments, questions, suggestions. Even if you disagree, it is a safe zone. And some of you already supported, and some of you might want to support the program. I would encourage you, if you'd like to support the program, go to peacemakernetwork.com. That's peacemakernetwork.com. There you can become a badge, BADGE supporter for as little as $3 a month. By the way, that support just doesn't help the podcast. It helps us help the heroes of America. That is, law enforcement, first responders, and of course, the military. Now, in just a moment, we're going to share with you information about the alleged killer, Bryan Kohberger, that you may not know, including how in the world did he elude police for 7 weeks? It's hard to fathom how anyone could break into a home and savagely kill 4 people at the same time, leave, and not be found immediately, with all that blood, all that DNA. Well, we're going to tell you how he happened to elude authorities for as long as he did. We're also going to tell you about an eyewitness. Yep, there was an eyewitness that helped bring authorities to Bryan Kohberger as the alleged murderer. And how about red flags? Yep, we're going to share with you a red flag that may have warned people about this guy way before the murderers. And I guess there are those wondering, why did the murderer kill with a knife? Why did he use a knife up close and personal? Well, we may have the answer to that as well. Hey, would you like to know what this alleged murderer said right after the killings, after these murders, what he said about the murders, even before he was a suspect? We'll tell you that as well. We're going to get to all that in a moment. Right now it's time for a Crazy Crook story. Unfortunately, this Crazy Crook story bears that crazy name. Yep, you got it, Florida Man. Hey, Google Florida Man sometime, and you'll be amazed at the stories. Yep, there's no reason for you to fear that yours truly here will ever run out of Crazy Crook stories. That's as long as Florida Man exists. This guy is from Brevard County, Florida. Yep, where a man was taken into custody just this past Monday. His name is Michael Banks, 36 years of age. The incident, it occurred approximately 1:55 p.m. at the Home Depot, located at 200 North Courtney Parkway in Merritt Island. By the way, Merritt Island's a very beautiful city, despite this crazy event. And according to deputies, they were alerted to the scene by a witness who observed Banks. The witness observed Banks. Now, hold on. Here it is. She saw Banks as he climbed on top of a van, and then subsequently he jumped onto a Nissan truck. Yep, a Nissan truck. Banks then continued to jump from truck to an SUV, then to a Jeep, then to another SUV, and finally a sedan jumped right on their rooftops and their hoods. And now, now a new term emerges, at least for me. It's a new term for me. I haven't heard it very often, if ever. You see, in Florida, we not only have wave surfing here, but apparently now we have car surfing. That's right, car surfing. And it is not without consequences. You see, there were hoods and roofs on several vehicles that sustained damage. It really came to cost thousands of dollars in estimated repair costs. That owner of that Nissan truck, the owner of the sedan, well, they each estimated their costs. The damages would exceed way over $1,000. And so now, Banks faces 2 counts of criminal mischief. Yep, my friend, his car surfing, Banks' car surfing, well, it found him following a wave. This wave was a wave of crime, and he followed that wave all the way to the county jail. And my friend, this is why this guy is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's crazy crook of the day. Now let's get to our main focus. Who is this guy by the name of Bryan Kohberger, who is the alleged murderer of the Idaho college student killings? Well, he's a 28-year-old man. He was taken into custody by an FBI SWAT team and the Pennsylvania State Police. That was back on December the 30th. And he was found there in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, there at the home of his parents. Kohberger, by the way, he was born on November the 21st, 1994, in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. And shortly after he finished high school, by the way, he did that at Pleasant Valley High School, that's in 2013, he then attended the Monroe Career and Technical Institute, but dropped out just a year later. Then he attended the Northampton Community College in Bethlehem. There, he actually earned an associate degree in psychology. That was in 2018. After he graduated from Northampton, well, believe it or not, and we'll talk about this even more into the episode, but he actually worked as a security guard. That's right, a security guard for the Pleasant Valley School District. By the way, which was the same school district where his father previously worked as a maintenance worker for many years. And his mom, she also worked there as a substitute teacher. And Bryan, our suspect, received a BA in 2020 and an MA, master's, actually in criminal justice from DeSales University. That's located in Center Valley, Pennsylvania. So then it was in the summer of 2022, 2022, that year, that's the infamous year we're talking about, Kohberger then moved to Washington State. He was going out there to pursue a PhD at WSU, which is known as Washington State University. It's in Pullman, Washington. And get this, that campus is less than 8 miles west of Moscow, Idaho. That's where the killings took place. Now, at the time of the killings, he was a doctoral. He was actually studying for his doctor's degree in criminology. He was a doctoral student in criminology, and he had completed his first semester there. He did that, get this, just 9 days before his arrest. Now, earlier I did mention that there was a possibility of red flags regarding this man's behavior. Well, here is one of them. You see, our alleged murderer, Kohberger, he had been a teacher's assistant at Washington State University. And listen to this, less than 2 weeks before, BEFORE, less than 2 weeks before the murders, well, the faculty members, they called him for a meeting. And they discussed growing concerns about his behavior and conduct. That, my friend, was before the murderers. And then he was actually terminated as a teaching assistant on December the 19th. Now, that decision was based on unsatisfactory performance as a teaching assistant, including his failure to meet the norms of professional behavior in his interactions with the faculty. Now, I don't know about you, but the next thing I have to wonder is, was this rejection as a teaching assistant, was that the event that triggered his violence? As you may know, often with serial killers, they're triggered by events. Did this one trigger him? Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not offering this as an excuse or justification of what he did, but it's just another tool to use in understanding the minds of these violent psychos so we can catch them in their violent spree or maybe intervene prior to their violence. Now let's talk a little bit about this weirdness about Bryan. Now his mother, a lady by the name of Mary Ann, she wrote a letter to the newspaper. She actually wrote a letter in the newspaper about the shooting there in Texas, the Uvalde shooting. She once gave his favorite quote as a line from, well, it was described. He described him. She gave a favorite quote as a line from a startle. But he was described by his mother as very OCD with, quote, weird dietary restrictions. You see, the New York Post actually supported that statement from his mom that he was kind of weird with his diet and he had certain restrictions. Well, she reported that Kohberger's former aunt, who wanted to remain anonymous, she told the newspaper that Kohberger worried his family with his bizarre eating habits. And she again described his diet restrictions as, quote, very, very weird. She went on, the aunt said, it went above and beyond being vegan. His aunt and uncle even had to buy new pots and pans, get this, because he would not eat anything that had ever had meat cooked into them. Yep, he did seem to be very OCD. That also seemed that our suspect, alleged killer Kohberger, he actually frequented a bar up there in Pennsylvania. It was called the Seven Sirens Brewing Company. And the owner of that bar, Jordan, 34 years of age rather, he actually told NBC News that female staff, well, they complained about Kohberger's behavior when he came into that establishment. Now, this owner went ahead and told NBC that Kohberger was usually alone, sitting at the bar. He was observing and watching. And the staff had said things like this, hey, this guy makes creepy comments. Keep an eye on him. He'll have 2 or 3 beers and then just get a little too comfortable. That's what the owner said. Said that Kohberger would ask female staff or customers who they were at the brewery with, where they lived. And he grew upset if women rejected him. Once he called a staff member a bitch. That's what the owner told NBC News. Now, yep, you're right. Just because someone acts weird does not mean that this person's a bad person or one that would break the law. But there are several other things about this guy Kohberger that does make one wonder where this man was headed. And again, there's also a pattern. I always look for patterns. And the pattern we see in his life was rejection because of his weird social interactions. And the response to such rejection is often what we see in both serial killers and mass murderers. But while we're talking about his mental characteristics, let's also talk about some of his physical characteristics. And in doing that, we learn, now get this, there was an eyewitness to the killer on that night. You see, one of the roommates who was not killed or injured that evening. In court documents, they reveal her as DM. We know the name's Dylan, but that's the way she's identified as DM. She told investigators she heard crying in the house the morning of the murders, and she also heard a voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." She then saw, quote, a figure clad in black clothing, a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose, walking toward her. That's according to the arrest affidavit. She went on to describe the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built, and listen to this, with bushy eyebrows. And the male walked just past DM as she stood in, quote, frozen shock phase. Now, we don't know whether Bryan saw her or not. It was probably dark in the house, but she saw him. Now, while this physical description did not lead authorities immediately to the suspect in and of itself, it does certainly add to the preponderance of evidence that no doubt will be released in the trial, if it goes to trial, this case. Now, you know, she said he was a slim person, but he was not always a slim person. This is what we've come to understand. Another guy by the name of Nick McLaughlin. He knew Kohberger in high school. He told Daily Beast, he told them that the suspect was, quote, down to earth, but then became thinner than a rail and very aggressive his senior year after being overweight the year before. He went on to say that Kohberger was taking boxing classes. He always wanted to fight somebody. And get this. This person that knew him said he took criminal justice courses because he was thinking of becoming a police officer. Interesting, isn't it? Remember our series on the Golden State Killer? We mentioned that even that killer might have been a cop, and actually he was a cop for a few years before he got arrested for shoplifting, of all things. So here was this guy, Bryan Kohberger, one time wanted to be a cop. Now, an anonymous Reddit poster who knew Kohberger and his mother in intermediate school, well, this moderator writes the poster's account of knowing Kohberger. The post reads this: I knew Bryan at Pleasant Valley Intermediate School. He was overweight when we were short-term friends. He was bullied a lot, socially awkward. He had anger issues. I definitely got the impression, well, he said, I knew that there were some problems. He went on to say that our friendship ended after he got into a physical fight with me. Then he goes on again to confirm what we've already reported. He lost weight going into high school. Had to be close to 100 pounds of weight loss. That's why he looked older. He would frequent a boxing gym during his weight loss. And friends from high school, they say he did become more aggressive after losing weight. You see, he had trouble making friends when we were acquainted, he said. Now, interesting enough, said that his mom, though, was very different. She was very sweet. This person went on to say, I really hope she's innocent. She was very nice to me and many other students. Another lady by the name of Casey, she had a TikTok page. She discussed Kohberger, who she says she knew in high school. In a series of her videos, she accused Kohberger of being a heroin user when she knew him, but said that he was nice to her. She also mentioned that he lost a lot of weight. She said she doesn't think he has any Instagram accounts in his name that are real. That's the one possible exception that we all know about now, the Instagram page that actually followed one of the victims. Now, according to her, she said Kohberger had anger issues, but thankfully I never saw them face to face. She went ahead to say that Kohberger had actually bullied her brother. That came to a shock to her. She went on to say that the arrest of Kohberger left her shaking, sick to her stomach. She did note that Kohberger did kick boxing. Now, my friend, one question that does come to our minds and did come to mind early on the investigation was how was it that Kohberger was able to elude capture, especially right after the murders? And would you like to know? Would you like to know what our suspect said to others right after the murders, about those murders? Well, we now have news. One of Kohberger's neighbors there in Pullman, Washington, that's where he was when he actually, allegedly, committed these murders. This neighbor said that the suspect spoke to him about the killings just mere days after they occurred, before he was considered a suspect. In fact, the neighbor said he was the one that brought it up in conversation. Now, this neighbor did not want to be identified, but he told CBS News back on January 11th, he said he asked if I'd heard about the murders, which I did, and then he said, yeah, this is what he said, yeah, it seems like they have no leads. Seems like it was a crime of passion. At the time of the conversation, he said it was only a few days after it happened. There wasn't much details out. That's what the neighbor said. Well, he was certainly smart enough not to reveal to others incriminating information that would lead someone to him. He was described, though, by those in class right after the murders as appearing very tired. In fact, that phrase came up quite a few times. Often what happens when a serial killer kills? You see, he has these pent-up emotions, and he releases them at the time of the killing, and so often afterward, well, they're kind of tired after releasing all those pent-up emotions. So how was it that he was able to conceal his identity for weeks? Well, one thing that we already know now, he was a student of crime. He knew quite a bit about it. He studied psychology at a Pennsylvania community college. He did research the emotions and psychological traits of criminals while in grad school. He actually posted a thread on Reddit about a research project that would study the minds and feelings of criminals. He wrote, "My name is Bryan. I'm inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and certain traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. In particular, this study seems to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense, with emphasis on your thoughts, feelings throughout the entire experience." Now, that had been deleted, but there was a screenshot that was saved from that, and the study went on to say, please note, the following survey asks you to detail your most recent criminal offense, whether you were caught or not. In the event that you were not charged, convicted, or incarcerated for the offense, you may still participate in this research. And it did list Kohberger as a quote-unquote student investigator. Went on to said, we are interested in understanding how emotions and certain traits influence the decision-making involved in committing a crime. After completing a series of background questions, you will be presented with open-ended questions relevant to the most recent crime you're involved in. You're going to be asked to detail your thoughts, emotions, and actions from the beginning to the end of the crime commission process. That's in order to best understand your unique traits. Surveys will also be included after the open-ended section. Please be assured your responses will be kept completely confidential. Now, questions in the survey did dig into whether a person committed their first crime when they were alone, or whether they were employed, or whether they were under the influence of drugs and alcohol and more. Other questions includes how was your life right before the crime occurred, and did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and the feelings at this point. How did you travel to and enter the location that the crime occurred? After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target? Please detail your thoughts and feelings. Now, you see, our suspect had access to all that information. He was studying crime. He was studying crime in progress. In fact, Kohberger, as we said before, obtained a master's degree from DeSales University. He earned his bachelor's degree in 2020, master's degree in 2022. Remember, I also told you he worked as a security guard at a school that his mother and father worked on. You see, as many young people have various thoughts on what they want to do, he also, at one time, we know that he wanted to be an Army Ranger. That's what someone reported. Now think about that. Is this where that K-bar knife comes into the crime? A knife that has not been found to this very day. No murder weapon has been found. He was smart enough to really get rid of that, wasn't he? Yes, he did know things that enabled him to do this crime, and he no doubt thought he could get away with it. No doubt in my mind, if he had gotten away with it, this alleged murder would kill again. So how did the killer get caught? He was so smart. He had all this background. He studied crime. How did he get caught? Well, actually, the way he got caught was the way I said he would get caught when I was reporting on this crime as the crime was developing. We reported on Charlie Crimebuster. If you'd like to follow this case in real time, just go on back to Charlie Crimebuster. Hear the reporting all about these murders as we were following them in real time before the killer got caught. You see, earlier in December, right after the murders, the authorities asked the public for information about a white 2011-2013 Elantra. They believed that car was in the immediate area of the crime scene. Now, interesting enough, 5 days after the murders, Kohberger, he received a new license plate for his white Elantra. Court documents cited Washington State license records revealed that. Perhaps he thought, if I have a different tag, they won't think that that was me. But after an overwhelming number of tips, investigators, they narrowed their focus to Kohberger by tracing ownership of the Elantra back to him. That's according to two law enforcement sources. And they're a Washington State University officer, campus police officer. Let's salute this guy. He located that 2015 white Elantra registered to Kohberger in an apartment complex parking lot. Then officials were able to zero in on him because his driver's license information and the photograph, hold on to it, that was consistent with the roommate's description. Remember when she saw that guy with bushy eyebrows? Tall, slim. And then the real kicker, his DNA. His DNA also matched DNA recovered at the crime scene, according to sources who explain authorities believe that Kohberger left the area, then went to Pennsylvania after the crime, and then even in trash recovered from the Kohberger family residence. There by Pennsylvania law enforcement, that was on December the 27th, they got that trash, sent it to Idaho State Lab for DNA testing, and that narrowed down Bryan Kohberger as the suspect. You see, the next day, the Idaho State Lab, they reported the DNA profile obtained from the trash. It matched a tan leather knife sheath found laying on the bed of one of the victims. He left that knife sheath behind, and that was a mistake that he made that I don't believe he'll ever get over. Phone records also indicated his phone was near that murder scene between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m., hours after he had allegedly killed those students. They also indicate the phone was near the murder's victims at least 12 times between June 2022 and the present day. He was stalking these victims. And a surveillance team, with the FBI, they tracked the suspect for several days in that area where he was arrested. Of course, we now know that he did drive across the country to his parents' house in that Elantra. They had also been surveilling his parents' house. They kept him under surveillance while investigators from the Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police, and the FBI all worked together to develop sufficient probable cause for an arrest warrant. And as often in these things, the suspect's family was very shocked. That's what their attorney said. And this 28-year-old man, Bryan Kohberger, he was taken into custody. by FBI SWAT team, Pennsylvania State Police, on December the 30th. So here this guy who thought that he was so smart he could elude police, found out he wasn't that smart as well. Because as smart as you may think you might be out there, you're not smarter than those of us who observe and love the badge and pledge to support and protect the public. So there you have it. Now you know a little more about this guy that's going to go to trial for killing these 4 precious students at the Idaho College University. Let's all pray for justice. I believe it'll be done, don't you? So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert, yep, for the life you save, it may be your very own.